My daughter hadn't spoken to me for 15 long years. She ignored my calls, never opened my letters. But then, the moment I came into money, she suddenly wanted me back in her life. She invited me over for dinner, pretending like nothing had ever happened. I already had a plan in mind. When I walked through her door, I smiled and told her, "I brought you a surprise." Her eyes lit up, shiny and wide, clearly thinking about the money. But the moment she saw what I'd really brought, her face went pale and that fake smile disappeared. "I'll tell you everything. First, thank you for listening to the voices inside. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment about where you're tuning in from. We might give you a shout out next time." Today's shout out goes to Sarah Thompson from Texas. "Thanks for being part of our family." Now here's how it all started. The phone rang loud in my quiet kitchen. It was getting dark outside and I was just fixing myself some dinner. Honestly, I almost didn't answer it. Telemarketers always seem to call right when I sit down to eat. But for some reason I picked it up. "Mom." That voice slammed into me like a baseball to the chest. 15 years. 15 years of silence, and now she was talking like we'd spoken yesterday. "Jessica," I said, trying to keep steady though my hands were shaking. "Yeah, it's me," she laughed nervously, the same little laugh she used to have when she got caught doing something wrong as a kid. "Listen, I know it's been forever, but Thanksgiving's coming. Daniel and I thought it might be nice to have you over. You know, family time." Family time. The words tasted bitter. My eyes drifted to the old photo on my table. Jessica was 7 back then, missing her front teeth but smiling wide before everything fell apart. "A while." I couldn't help the edge in my voice. "Jessica, you haven't called me in 15 years. Do you remember all those birthday cards I sent? The Christmas presents? Every one of them came back unopened." "Mom, come on. I've just been busy. You know how hard it is, raising kids, building a life. There's never enough time. Never enough time." I paced around my little kitchen, glancing out the window at the pretty lights strung on the neighbors' houses. But suddenly she had plenty of time, right after the paper ran that story about my lottery win. "I don't know what you're talking about," she muttered. "Don't you? $7 million. Front page of the Chicago Tribune last month. Funny timing for this little family reunion, don't you think?" "Mom, no, that's not why I'm calling. I mean, I'm happy for you really. But we just thought it'd be good to reconnect. You're getting older, and so am I." I almost laughed. "I've been getting older for 15 years, Jessica. Where were you when I had my surgery? When I spent every holiday in this house, alone?" Her tone shifted, sharp and defensive. "Look, I know things weren't perfect between us, but that's in the past. We're family. That has to mean something. Family." The word dropped heavy between us, darker than the night outside. I thought about all those empty birthdays, the unanswered calls, the returned letters, the years of silence. "You're right," I finally said. "Family does mean something. I'll come to dinner." "Really? That's great, Mom. Thanksgiving, 5 o'clock. I'll text you the address." "Do that." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "And Jessica, I've got a surprise for you too." "A surprise?" Her voice brightened like I could hear dollar signs ringing in her head. "What kind of surprise?" "You'll see," I told her, then hung up before she could ask again. I set the phone down slowly, my hands still trembling just a little. The kitchen didn't feel the same anymore. Like the air had shifted, like something big was about to happen. Outside, snow had begun to fall, covering the empty streets in soft white silence. I stood there for a while, staring at nothing, lost in the thought of the last time I'd seen my daughter's face. It had been so many years, but some wounds never really heal. They just hide under layers of time, waiting for the moment to surface again. I walked to the window and watched the snow drifting down, and it carried me back to that December 15 years ago when everything in my life cracked apart. I'd been sitting in the same kitchen, but the house had felt warmer then, filled with hope, filled with the dream of family. Jessica was packing her bags, shoving clothes into boxes like every fold of fabric was meant to cut me. "You're pathetic, Mom," she had said, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. "You're 45 years old, and what do you even have? A bank job that barely pays the bills, a house we might lose, and dreams that are never coming true." I remembered standing in the doorway, watching her take her life away from me piece by piece. "I thought we were doing okay," I whispered back then. "Okay." She laughed, but it sounded like glass breaking. "When's the last time you bought me something nice? When did you ever take me anywhere fun? Dad treats me like a princess." She meant her new stepfather, the one with the shiny car and the fancy job. The man who had been calling our house for months before I finally realized what was happening. What about our family? I begged. What about staying together? She snapped her suitcase shut. I need a winner for a mom. All you've ever been is someone who gives up. The divorce had been fast and cruel. Her father's lawyer was sharp and expensive. Mine was cheap, tired, and always 2 steps behind. Her dad walked away with the big house, the nice car, and most painful of all, Jessica's love. I ended up here in this smaller place, starting over at 45 with nothing but my low-paying bank job and the bitter taste of being left behind. Jessica was 18 then, old enough to choose. And she chose them without hesitation. Mom's right, she said during one of our last conversations, her voice colder than January air. You just make excuses. If you worked harder, tried harder, none of this would have happened. I tried to explain, tried to make her understand. But she was already gone in her mind. Her stepfather had money, influence, connections. Me. I had a cramped apartment and a broken heart. 15 years of silence followed. 15 years of birthday cards returned unopened. Phone calls that never went through, Christmas mornings spent in an empty house. I taught myself to live with the emptiness. To find comfort in small things. My books, my job, the kindness of neighbors. But deep down I never stopped hoping. Never stopped believing that one day my daughter might remember the woman who taught her to ride a bike, who stayed up all night when she was sick, who loved her more than anything in this world. Even when love wasn't enough. Then came the lottery ticket. $7 million from a scratch-off I bought at a gas station out on Main Street. The win hit the local news first, then spread to the bigger papers. Within a week, the calls started pouring in. Old friends I hadn't heard from in decades, distant relatives I barely remembered. And then today, the call I had been waiting for and dreading all at the same time. I walked over to my desk and pulled out the folder I'd been building for months. Inside were bank statements, investment records, legal papers, everything I would need for Thanksgiving Day. Everything I needed to show Jessica exactly what kind of woman her mother had become. The snow outside kept falling, soft and steady, blanketing the town in white. Soon I'd finally get my chance to give Jessica, and her stepfather, the surprise they'd been waiting for. Though something told me it wasn't going to be the kind of surprise they imagined. Smiling to myself, I closed the folder. 15 years is a long time to wait for justice, but some things are worth waiting for. Loneliness had been my teacher, though I didn't recognize it at first. After the divorce, when the sadness set deep inside me like winter frost, I needed something to fill those endless, empty hours. That's when I discovered I had a talent for numbers. Not just balancing a bank account, but turning numbers into possibility, into something solid. It began back in 2008. I saw a foreclosure notice in the Chicago Tribune. A little house on Maple Street. Nothing fancy, but the price grabbed me. While everyone else was running from real estate, I saw an opening. On my lunch break, I drove past the place. Paint peeling, grass wild, windows broken. But I could see the good bones underneath. That night, I spread the newspaper across my kitchen table, reading about mortgage rates and housing markets like it was the most exciting story in the world. "You sure about this, Mrs. Carter?" the banker asked me, peering over his glasses. "Real estate's a risky bet right now." "I'm sure," I told him, steady as stone. I signed the papers with hands that didn't tremble, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. It cost me every penny I'd saved since the divorce, plus a small loan from my retirement fund. That house became my project. After work, I'd drive over with tools rattling in my trunk, then spend hours scraping paint, patching leaks, fixing boards one by one. And the work, it didn't feel like survival anymore. Felt like building a future. 6 months later, I had renters. A young couple, grateful for solid walls and working heat. Their rent covered the loan with a little extra left over. I used that money right away to buy another house. Then another. The Great Recession for me became a hidden blessing. While others lost fortunes, I built mine slowly, carefully, one property at a time. I learned to read neighborhoods like novels, spotting the potential where most people only saw failure. Late nights at my kitchen table became routine, spreadsheets glowing on the computer screen as I tracked every dollar in and out. By 2015, I owned 8 houses across town. By 2020, nothing about my life on the outside looked rich. I still lived in the same small rental, drove the same dependable car, wore simple clothes. But underneath, I was stronger than ever. That strength came from patience, discipline, and choices made in solitude. The lottery win was luck, sure, but it landed on top of a foundation I had already built with sweat and persistence. $7 million added to the fortune I had created myself. I was worth more than Jessica could ever imagine, more than her stepfather would ever believe. I glanced at the clock, almost midnight. The snow had stopped, leaving the town wrapped in perfect silence. Tomorrow would bring new chances, new moments to show them that the quiet woman they once dismissed as a failure had become something else entirely. Did Jessica know the truth of what I had accomplished? Did she understand her mother wasn't just lucky but smart? Somehow I doubted it. In her mind, I was still the broken woman who had lost everything 15 years ago. That woman, the broken one from years ago, was gone. In her place stood someone who had learned how to turn loneliness into strength and failure into victory. The old house creaked around me, familiar in its quiet way, and I reminded myself there was still work to do. Thanksgiving was coming and I was going to be ready. Morning arrived with a layer of fresh snow clinging to the windows. I was sipping coffee at the kitchen table when the phone rang again. I froze, cup halfway to my lips. 2 calls in 2 days, after 15 years of silence. Mom. Jessica's voice hit me like a blast of cold air. She still had that breathy tone she always used whenever she wanted something, though now age had made it rougher, less sweet. I hope you don't mind me calling, she began. I got your number from Daniel. I set my coffee down carefully. Jessica, how nice of you to call again. Listen, she rushed on. I know things ended badly between us, but we have a daughter together. That has to mean something, right? I could tell immediately, Jessica was in trouble. Real trouble. And with my recent good fortune, I knew exactly why she was calling. In the background I heard whispering. Then Daniel's voice, low but clear. Ask for more. Tell her it's urgent. What kind of trouble? I asked, keeping my tone calm though my grip on the phone tightened. Business trouble. You know how restaurants are, it's tough. He's got people demanding money. And if she doesn't pay soon Jessica let the sentence trail off. I hate to ask, but could you help? Just until things get better. More muffled whispers. Say it's for the grandkids' future, Daniel urged. It's for the grandkids' future, Jessica repeated, her voice taking on that pleading note I remembered so well from my marriage. You don't want them to suffer because of business problems, do you? I stared at the steam curling off my coffee, remembering how many times I'd fallen for this exact game. Fake emergencies, emotional manipulation. She'd always known exactly which buttons to push. How much? I asked flatly. Well, 50,000 would cover the immediate issues. But if you could do 75. Another whisper. Maybe 100 just to be safe. 100,000, Jessica said, like she was asking to borrow a cup of sugar from a neighbor. I see. Mom, I know you're angry about the past, she rushed, but this is bigger than that. This is about family, about doing what's right. What's right? I repeated slowly. Tell me, Jessica. What was right about 15 years of silence? About sending back birthday cards unopened? About teaching your children their grandmother didn't exist? Her tone shifted, harder now. That's ancient history. We're talking about right now. About your daughter's future. I won't give you a penny, I said. The words came out clean. No bitterness, no anger. Just truth. What? Her voice cracked with disbelief. Mom, you can't be serious. You won millions. What's a few thousand to help your own daughter? Not a penny, I repeated. Not now. Not ever. But you love her. You're her mother. How can you abandon her when she needs you most? I thought about all the times I'd needed them. Every unanswered call, every unopened letter. And then I realized. I had learned from the best. The line went dead. She'd hung up. I set the phone down and looked out the window at the falling snow. The silence that followed felt different this time. Not empty. Full of possibility. I'd passed the test. 15 years ago I would have written that check, desperate to buy back love. But the woman I had become knew the truth. Respect can't be bought. And love that comes with a price tag isn't love at all. I finished my coffee and started sketching out my next move. Thanksgiving was still a few days away, but I had no doubt my daughter and her husband weren't finished with their little scheme. That was fine. I'd already waited 15 years for this moment. I could wait a little longer to see just how far they were willing to go. They thought they were dealing with the same broken woman who had lost everything all those years ago. They had no idea who they were really up against. Sleep was restless that night, and by morning I knew exactly what I had to do. The sunlight stretched long shadows across my kitchen floor as I sat with another cup of coffee, staring at the phone. One more test. One last check of what I already knew deep down. I picked up the receiver and dialed Jessica's number, my fingers steady despite the weight of the moment. "Mom." He sounded surprised, maybe even a little pleased. "I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," I told her. "About your problems." "Oh, that." Her tone shifted immediately, more cautious. "I probably made it sound worse than it is. You know how I worry." I leaned back in my chair, watching the winter wind rattle my windows. "Actually, Jessica, I called because I have some problems of my own." "Problems?" "Financial ones." I let the words hang in the air, listening as her breathing changed. "I made some bad choices with the lottery money. Got caught up in online trading. Stocks. All those digital things people wouldn't stop talking about." "Oh no," she said, but there wasn't an ounce of sadness in her tone. It was calculating. "How bad is it?" "Pretty bad. Lost most of it in the market crash last week. Risky investments, they warned me, but I thought I knew better." I paused, giving her time to absorb the lie. "I'll have enough to cover my bills, but not much more." The silence stretched for exactly 4 seconds. I counted. "Well," she said at last, her voice colder than a Nebraska winter, "that's really unfortunate, Mom. But I guess these things happen." "They do." I waited, giving her every chance to offer some comfort, a word of kindness, anything at all that sounded like real concern. Instead she cleared her throat. "So, about Thanksgiving. Maybe it would be better if you didn't come this year. I mean, with everything you're dealing with, you probably need to focus on getting your finances sorted out." There it was, the mask falling away completely. "I see," I said. "So the invitation is cancelled. It's just, you understand, right? Daniel's been planning this big dinner and we were kind of counting on, well, anyway, it's probably better this way. Less stress for everyone." "Less stress," I repeated, nodding to myself. "Of course. I wouldn't want to burden you with my presence." "Mom, don't be like that. Just practical. When you get back on your feet, we'll definitely get together." "When I get back on my feet." I smiled grimly. "Right. Look, I have to run, meeting in 5 minutes. But we'll talk soon, okay?" The line went dead before I could respond. I set the phone down and stared out at the snow-covered streets. 15 years of silence, and the moment they believed I was broke again, it went right back to ignoring me. I'd known this would happen, but hearing it so plainly still stung. Not because I was shocked, but because it confirmed everything I'd already suspected. Love with conditions isn't love at all. It's a business deal. I walked to the window and pressed my hand against the cold glass. Outside, neighbors were starting their day, warming up cars, shoveling driveways. Normal people with normal lives. People who probably never stopped to think about how lucky they were, that their families loved them for who they were, not for what they owned. The test was complete. The jury in my mind had already delivered its verdict. Now it was time to plan the sentence. With that clarity, I spent the afternoon digging into the lives my daughter and her husband had built while pretending mine didn't exist. If they wanted to play games, I had to learn the rules. I started with some old contacts from my brief stint working as a bookkeeper at Walker's Diner years back. A few phone calls later, I had the truth about Jessica's restaurant. Or rather, its spectacular crash. Carter's Fusion Kitchen. Mary from the Chamber of Commerce actually laughed when I asked. That girl burned through investor money like it was confetti. Promised fine dining, delivered nothing but debt and disappointment. What about the investors? I asked. They're furious. Word is she owes nearly $500,000 between the bank loan and private backers. Some are already lining up lawyers. I jotted it all down on a yellow legal pad, my bookkeeper's brain automatically sorting the details. $500,000 in debt. That explained the desperation. The internet filled in the rest. Jessica's Instagram was a graveyard of failed ventures, each business lasting just long enough to lure investors before collapsing. Her Facebook painted a different picture. Champagne dinners, designer handbags, beach vacations, all funded by money that wasn't hers. But it was Daniel's social media that sickened me the most. His profile showed a man who had mastered the art of playing the victim. Post after post about his brave fight with depression, paired with photos of him looking exhausted and defeated. Day 23 of treatment, one update read. Therapy is helping, but the costs are overwhelming. Every dollar keeps me going. I scrolled through months of these staged cries for help, each one more manipulative than the last. Thousands of dollars in donations poured in from kind strangers, all built on lies. Because I knew the truth. Daniel wasn't depressed. He was just greedy. A quick check with Lincoln General through a contact in billing confirmed it. No treatments. No therapy sessions. Not even a doctor's note for mental health. Nothing. I gathered it all together in a folder. The same way I'd once assembled spreadsheets for my real estate deals. Bank records. Screenshots. Angry testimonials from investors. A paper trail that revealed the truth. Fraud, deception, and manipulation, carefully spun into sympathy. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had branded me a failure, a woman beneath their notice. But while they drowned in debt and lies, I had built wealth through patience and strategy. I closed my laptop as the evening settled over town. The glow of the screen faded into the darkness, leaving me with the quiet hum of satisfaction. For the first time in years, I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the author. The phone rang again, shrill in the silence. I didn't bother answering. No doubt another desperate attempt to squeeze money from their rich mother. Let it ring. Let them sweat. Thanksgiving was still days away and I had plenty of work left to do. Outside, snow drifted down, blanketing the town in white. Clean. Pure. Like a fresh start waiting to be written. When morning came, I reached for the phone before my coffee even finished brewing. The notes from yesterday's research were spread across my kitchen table like a battle plan. And I was ready to go to war. It was time to see just how far my daughter's greed would really take her. Jessica picked up on the second ring. Mom, this is unexpected, twice in 2 days. I've got good news, I said, settling into my chair. Remember those online investments I told you about? The ones that wiped me out. Yeah. Her voice carried a tired edge, like she already suspected where this conversation might be going. Well, turns out I managed to get most of it back. Day trading, buy low, sell high. Worked out better than I thought. The silence stretched exactly 3 seconds. I counted. That's fantastic, Mom, she said quickly. I'm so relieved. I was worried about you. The lie rolled off her tongue smooth as butter. Not the faintest hint of guilt over how fast she tossed me aside when she thought I was broke. So, I continued, keeping my tone light, I was thinking, maybe Thanksgiving is back on. If the invitation still stands. Of course it does. Daniel will be thrilled. He's been looking forward to seeing you. Another lie. I could almost hear the gears turning behind her words, like the clatter of an old cash register. Actually, Mom, she went on, her voice lowering, since you mentioned your financial recovery, I was wondering if you might consider helping me with something. I smiled grimly. There was. Oh, it's just this business opportunity. Time-sensitive, the kind of deal that could really set us up for life. But I need to move fast. $200,000 would cover my entry investment. I know it sounds like a lot, but Mom, this isn't just about me. It's about securing our family's future. The kids' future. And honestly, after everything that's happened between us, I thought this might be a way to start over. The manipulation was almost impressive in its boldness. Family. Grandchildren. Fresh starts. Every button she thought might still work on the woman I used to be. Tell me more about this opportunity, I said, letting just enough curiosity creep into my voice to keep her talking. It's in tech, app development. Revolutionary stuff. Early investors are projecting returns of 400% in just 12 months. The same pitch she'd probably fed to half a dozen others. I wondered if she even bothered changing the numbers. 400%, I repeated slowly. That sounds almost too good to be true. I know it sounds crazy, but that's how breakthrough technologies work, Mom. Remember when smartphones first came out? The people who got in early made fortunes. I let the silence hang as if I were honestly considering it. But inside I was marveling at how completely she'd unmasked herself. No mention of ever paying me back. No apology for the 15 years of silence. Just her hand out, palm up, waiting. I'll need to think about it, I said finally. Of course, she replied quickly, but Mom, Time really is critical. The window closes right after Thanksgiving. If you're going to do this, we need to move fast. Fake urgency. Classic scammer's trick. Push for speed, don't allow second thoughts. I understand. Let me sleep on it. That's all I can ask. Mom, thank you. Just for considering it. It means everything to me. I hung up and leaned back, watching the morning sun glint off the notes spread across my table. She'd taken the bait completely. No suspicion. No questions about how I'd magically recovered my losses overnight. Just raw, unfiltered greed. I picked up my pen and wrote a single word across the page. Confirmed. 15 years of silence. And now, after all that time, she wanted $200,000, based on a 5-minute phone call. The audacity was almost admirable in its shamelessness. I glanced at my watch. The business day was just starting. And I had other calls to make, other pieces to move into place. Jessica thought she was playing me. What she didn't realize was that the game had already started, and I was the one holding the cards. With the bait set, I turned to the contacts I'd gathered during yesterday's research. The investors she'd scammed deserved to know exactly where their money had gone, and where the woman who stole it was hiding. I began with the restaurant supply company. The receptionist transferred me to a Mr. Rodriguez, who already sounded worn down even at 9 in the morning. "You're calling about Jessica Carter?" His voice sharpened. "What's your connection to her?" "I'm someone who believes in accountability," I told him carefully. "And from what I understand, she owes your company quite a bit." "Quite a bit." He let out a bitter laugh. "We're talking fraud. Plain and simple." Then she disappeared. No address, no number, nothing. Our lawyers can't even find her. What if I told you I knew exactly where she was? The squeak of his chair came through the line as he leaned forward. "I'm listening." "She's in Lincoln, Nebraska. Been living there for months with her husband, already plotting the next scheme." I gave him her address, phone number, and the social media evidence I'd collected. His excitement was obvious. "How do you know all this?" he pressed. "Let's just say I have a personal interest in seeing justice done." After Rodriguez, I moved on to the investors Jessica had listed on her failed restaurant's business filings. Their reactions were all the same: doubt at first, then white-hot anger when I handed over the proof. "That lying thief," snapped Patricia Harris, who had sunk $30,000 into Jessica's so-called fusion kitchen. "I knew she was hiding somewhere. My lawyer told me we'd need a private investigator just to track her down." "Consider the investigation complete," I said. "I'll also send you screenshots of her current lifestyle, designer bags, fancy dinners, vacations, all while she's been claiming bankruptcy." By noon I had spoken with 6 investors. By 2 they were organizing a group lawsuit. By 3 they already had a joint call scheduled with their lawyers. I sat back in my little office, surrounded by papers and screenshots, my phone buzzing with updates. Each one gave me more satisfaction than the last. "Mrs. Anonymous," Rodriguez said when he called back, his tone sharper, energized. "I don't know who you are, but you've given us exactly what we needed. We're filing emergency motions to freeze her accounts and grab any assets we can. How fast can this move?" "Days, not weeks. Thanksgiving could be very interesting for Ms. Carter." I slid his business card into a neat stack, the consequences piling higher by the hour. For 15 years Jessica had lived without consequences. That was about to end. The phone rang again. Patricia Harris this time. "Our lawyers are coordinating with the others. We're going to hit her from every angle. No more hiding. No more games." "I'm glad I could help," I told her. "One more thing," Patricia added, her voice softening. "When we find her, and we will find her, I want to thank you properly. You've given us hope when we thought there was none." After I hung up, I stood at the window staring out at the streets of Lincoln where Jessica thought she was untouchable. Snow had stopped falling, leaving the world crisp and sharp, perfect visibility for what was about to come. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to the local news station. If Jessica wanted to play games with other people's money, maybe it was time her neighbors knew exactly who they were living next to. And with the investigations gaining momentum, I set out the next afternoon to gather the final piece of evidence I needed. Lincoln General sat on the north side of town, its glass front catching the gray winter sky. I pulled into the visitor lot with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The automatic doors opened with a soft whoosh, releasing that familiar hospital smell, the one that always reminded me of my own surgery, the one Jessica never bothered to visit me for. I walked through the lobby, past families holding flowers in fear, until I found the billing office. Sandra Miller looked up from her computer in surprise. We'd known each other back when I was doing bookkeeping work for local businesses. "Helen Carter," she said, eyebrows raised. "What brings you here today?" "Hello, Sandra. I need a favor. And I know this crosses into sensitive territory." Her expression tightened with caution. "What kind of favor?" I slid a business card across the desk, the one from Rodriguez's firm. "I'm helping with a fraud investigation. There's a man collecting donations for medical treatments he never received. Good people are being taken advantage of." Sandra studied the card, then glanced back at me. "Sandra, it's my son-in-law, Daniel Morrison," I said quietly. "He's been running a scam on social media, pretending he's getting treatment for depression. People who can barely afford it are sending money, believing they're keeping him alive." Something flickered in her eyes. Sandra was the kind of woman who valued honesty over rules. "This stays between us," she said firmly. 20 minutes later, I sat in my car with a stack of printouts in my lap. Daniel's medical history stretched back 3 years. Routine checkups. A broken wrist last summer. Treatment for strep throat in March. Not a single psychiatry visit. No therapy sessions. No mental health diagnosis. Nothing. The harsh glow of the parking lot lights cut across the papers as I read every line. Each page confirmed what I already knew. His entire depression story was fiction. Every donation, every prayer, every ounce of sympathy, it was all built on a lie. I slipped the records into my coat pocket, the weight pressing against my chest like armor. Driving home through Lincoln's quiet streets, snow falling steady and soft, I thought about what I'd just done. At a red light, I wondered for a moment if I'd crossed a line. Medical records weren't meant to be shared this way. But then I thought of those families mailing $10 bills they couldn't afford, believing they were helping a man fight for his life. The light turned green. I drove on. Sometimes justice meant dirtying your hands. Back home, I slid the records into my growing folder, right next to the investor statements and the lawsuit papers. 3 separate lines of attack. All carefully planned. All perfectly timed. Jessica and Daniel had spent 15 years believing they were smarter than everyone else. Tomorrow would test that theory. Through my kitchen window, I saw holiday lights twinkling in neighbors' homes and allowed myself a small smile. This holiday season was about to get very interesting for the Morrison family. That evening, the phone rang again. I let it roll straight to voicemail, already knowing it would be Jessica or Daniel, armed with another fake apology or urgent crisis. Later, I listened to the message. A rambling mix of regret and not-so-subtle pleas for money. I deleted it without a second thought. The next morning, I packed my purse and slipped the folder of evidence into the passenger seat. Thanksgiving could wait. First, I was driving to the police station. The one I'd heard was very interested in fraud cases involving fake medical claims. For the first time in years, I felt like I had somewhere important to go, something meaningful to do. It felt good to be needed for the right reasons. As I pulled out of the driveway, I looked once at the house where I'd spent so many years waiting for a phone call that never came. Now I realized I'd been waiting for the wrong thing all along. The road ahead stretched wide and clear. I pressed the gas and drove forward, watching the past shrink smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. Thanksgiving morning arrived with crisp autumn air and golden leaves scattered across the lawns. I dressed carefully, neither too fancy nor too casual, and headed across town to the address Jessica had sent me weeks earlier. Their house sat in a middle-class neighborhood, brick homes lined neatly side by side, small yards dusted with leaves. Through the windows I caught shadows moving, Daniel setting the table, Jessica fussing in the kitchen. I rang the bell, arranging my face into what I hoped passed for motherly excitement. "Mom." Jessica opened the door with arms wide, as though we'd been sharing weekly dinners instead of living in silence for 15 years. "You made it. Come in, come in." Daniel appeared behind her, taller than I remembered, his smile just as fake. "Helen," he said smoothly, "so wonderful to see you. You look wealthy. Healthy." I stepped into the warm dining room, my eyes catching on mismatched but expensive furniture, an oversized TV, designer purses tossed casually on chairs. All of it bought with money that wasn't theirs. "Thank you for having me," I said, hanging my coat on their rack. I brought something special for later. A surprise for both of you. Their eyes lit up instantly. A surprise. Jessica clasped her hands together. How thoughtful. We sat down at a table set for 8, though only 3 of us were there. It was covered with dishes that looked picture-perfect but tasted straight from the grocery store. Daniel carved the turkey with dramatic flair, while Jessica poured wine and pressed me about my recovery from the supposed trading losses. So fortunate you managed to bounce back, she said, her eyes sliding away from mine. These market crashes can be so unpredictable. Indeed, I agreed, cutting the turkey neatly. But I've learned to be a lot more careful about who I trust with financial advice. Jessica leaned in, launching into her pitch about app development. Big returns. Tight timelines. Once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. I nodded, asked the right questions, let my voice sound curious, even impressed. And with every sign of my interest, their faces grew brighter, greedier. The knock came just as Daniel was setting a slice of pumpkin pie in front of me. Firm. The kind of knock that meant business. Jessica frowned, setting down her serving spoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. We walked to the front door together. Through the window, I saw a woman in a dark coat, envelope in hand. Jessica Morrison? She asked when the door opened. Yes. You've been served. She handed over the envelope and turned to leave. Jessica stared at the papers, color draining from her face. This can't be right. What is it, honey? Daniel asked, peering over her shoulder. His face darkened as he read aloud. It's a lawsuit. Multiple lawsuits. The restaurant investors had found her. Jessica's hands shook as she flipped through the stack of papers. Emergency asset freezes, demands for repayment, even criminal fraud charges. How did they even find me? Her voice cracked. I kept my face soft, the picture of concerned motherhood, while inside I savored every flicker of her panic. Oh my, I said gently. Terrible timing. Right in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. Jessica started pacing, raking her fingers through her hair. I need to call my lawyer. No, I need to get out of here. They could freeze everything. The house, the accounts, all of it. How much do they want? Daniel asked, his face tight. $500,000, she whispered. Plus damages. Plus interest. She looked like she might faint. Daniel turned to me with that same look I remembered from years ago. The one he always wore when they wanted something expensive. Helen, he said carefully, I know this is awkward, but Jessica's your daughter. With your recent good fortune, maybe you could help with the legal fees. Just until things settle down. He reached for his phone, already calculating how much he thought he could squeeze out of me. I smiled at him, the same patient smile I'd worn for 15 years of their manipulations. Actually, Daniel, I said evenly, I think you're about to have bigger problems than legal fees. He froze mid-dial. What do you mean? Jessica straightened, her voice sharpening with false confidence. I know someone. A lawyer, a Facebook friend. Brilliant guy, he handles fraud cases all the time. He'll fix this. She opened her phone, scrolling fast, but her confidence faltered. First, a flood of unread messages. Dozens, then more. At first she brushed it off. Holidays. People message all the time. But as she opened them, her face drained of color. What the hell? She whispered. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. Jessica, what is it? Daniel leaned over her shoulder. She read aloud, her voice breaking. They're saying, I faked Daniel's depression. Look at these comments. Fraud. Scammer. Disgusting. Hundreds of them. I sipped my coffee and watched. Jessica scrolled faster, her breathing shallow. Oh my God, there's a news article. Lincoln woman exposed for fake depression scam. This can't be happening. Someone hacked my medical records, she cried. This is illegal. Daniel's face was pale, his voice deadly quiet. Is it true? Of course not, Jessica snapped. I'm fighting depression. You know that I'm fighting. But I could see it, the doubt creeping into her eyes. The records were too detailed, too official. She wasn't stupid. Jesus, Daniel, she whispered, do you realize what this means? They're going to investigate everything. My restaurant debts. Your donations. All of it. Her phone buzzed nonstop now. Messages pouring in. Donors demanding refunds. Reporters chasing interviews. Authorities asking questions. Make it stop, she whispered desperately. I can't make it stop, Daniel muttered. Then, as if on cue, they both turned toward me, their faces a strange mix of fear and hope. The same look they'd given me countless times before whenever they needed money. Mom, Jessica said sweetly, forcing calm into her shaking voice. You said you had a surprise for us. Please, tell me it's the money. The investment. We need it now more than ever. Daniel leaned in eagerly. Helen, I know this looks bad, but we can fix it. With your help, we can hire the best lawyers, the best crisis managers. We can make this all go away. I stood slowly, setting down my coffee cup with care. Their eyes followed my every move, hungry, desperate. Actually, I said softly, I've already delivered your surprise. The words lingered in the air like smoke. I walked to the coat rack, sliding into my jacket, fastening each button deliberately. What do you mean? Jessica's voice was high, panicked. I mean exactly what I said, I told her. I've already given you what you deserve. Their voices chased me as I crossed the room. Mom, wait, you can't just leave. We need to talk about this. But I was already turning the handle, stepping into the crisp autumn air. The door closed behind me with a soft click, cutting off their pleading. I walked to my car without looking back, though in the glow of their dining room window I could see them still moving frantically, still trying to understand what had just happened, still clinging to the hope they could lie their way out of this. The engine purred as I pulled away. In the rearview mirror, a figure appeared at the window, Jessica, watching me disappear into the darkness. 15 years of silence. 15 years of dismissal. 15 years of being treated like I didn't exist. Now, they knew exactly how that felt. And if my story stayed with you, tap that like button and subscribe. It lets me know you're here and it helps this story reach the people who might need it most.